Going on, guys? It's Reaper. So recently I've been thinking about something new content wise that I could bring to you guys, and I thought a good idea would be a versus battle between two pretty interesting competitors, I'd say. Of course, that would be Aizawa versus Hawks, and I'm just going to preface this video real quick by saying this is only for entertainment, and I guess you could take it seriously if you really want to, because at the end of the day I'm going to come up with a real life decision on who I would think would win this battle. But I just feel like the two competitors in today's battle would be pretty interesting in a matchup, and of course this battle wouldn't actually happen in the anime or the manga, because currently these two competitors are actually hurt in the manga. Like right now, Hawks is literally a fried piece of chicken right now, and Aizawa is actually hurt real bad too. But I guess when they get better, this could actually happen in like filler for the anime, I guess. Like let's say they're training to get back to hero society, this is where this battle could realistically take place. But the point of this 1v1 battle is to determine who's stronger, and just giving you guys some entertainment. Obviously, I'm just going to give you guys a detailed rundown of the feats of each character, including support items, because I mean that's going to be allowed obviously if we're taking these competitors at their strongest, and taking all these factors into account to make a final decision at the end of the video. Now without further ado, let's get started. Shota Aizawa, Class 1A's homeroom teacher and a pro hero. Some say he's unfeeling and cold, while others most know him for his emotions, and we can know him to be emotional sometimes more than other people give him credit for. First appearing in chapter 5 of the manga, Aizawa was one of the first teachers that we met, besides All Might of course. We never really understood much about Aizawa besides what we were told, and we wouldn't find out much until we found out about My Hero Academia Vigilantes, which is actually a spin-off that takes place around 12 years before the original story. In this book, we find out the true origin of Aizawa and his deeper relationship to his friends, Present Mike and Oboro Shirakumo. Aizawa's friendship with Oboro Shirakumo would ultimately have a huge impact on him growing up, because when going through the academy, Aizawa was never really fond of his quirk because it never really was a physical quirk. Think of something like Explosion or All for One. Instead, it was more of a long-range quirk that didn't have any physical uses. He thought of himself as a low-tier hero and somebody who probably wouldn't even make it past graduation. But we as the readers knew better, and we knew what this quirk would eventually become, and it would prove very useful in his career. This quirk being, of course, Erasure, an emitter type quirk that works best at long range, as anyone within Aizawa's line of sight has their quirk deactivated, although this doesn't work on mutant type quirks, as those are permanent physical changes to one's body. Think of Ojiro's mutant type quirk Tail, or Suyu Asui's mutant type quirk Frog. Although the databook does state that the quirk can work on mutant type quirks, just not on a level that you may think. So let me explain. So when you think about Aizawa's quirk Erasure and how the mechanics work on a fundamental level, what's actually happening is that Aizawa, when he looks at you, he actually nullifies what's called a quirk factor, and you can think of quirk factors as like DNA mutations basically that give someone a quirk. So Aizawa can nullify these from working properly, which has one of two effects on you. One, you will not be able to use your quirk for however long Aizawa's Erasure quirk is active. Or two, your quirk won't be working properly, but you can still use it because Aizawa is messing around with your quirk factor. In other words, Aizawa wouldn't make Ojiro's tail fall off exactly. Rather, he probably wouldn't be able to counter and use it in the way that he wants to immediately, or for however long Aizawa stares at it. Guys, honestly, I don't know what baby Aizawa was thinking. This quirk is super busted. Like honestly, I'd have to rank it at least high A tier. That's sort of busted. So not to mention Aizawa's stats are pretty good as well. For reference, I'll pull up the stats according to the Ultra Archive book, which rate his technique a 6 out of 5 and his intellect a 4 out of 5, which makes total sense when you think about it, because in order to make up for Aizawa's lack of physical quirk, he had to train ridiculously hard in combat and tactical awareness just to make up for lacking a physical quirk. So his skills on that department are ridiculously insane. If I had to compare him to a real life superhero, I'd say he's definitely Spider-Man, especially with his binding cloth. He just swings around the city with it. That's definitely reminiscent of the webhead. But then his intelligence also makes sense as well, because like I said, his tactical awareness has been shown to be next level multiple times. And you would think somebody who analyzes quirks as a living and teaches kids how to use them properly and how they can get them better would be a smart person. For example, when Class 1A was training with the Wild Pussycats, Aizawa had Bakugo plunge his hands into boiling water to open up his pores so more nitroglycerin could come out and he would make bigger explosions. Some weaknesses of Aizawa include Aizawa's eyes, because, I mean, really, do I have to explain this? He's known for having the driest eyes around, and he even keeps eye drops with him so they don't get too dry. And with Erasure being an ocular based ability, blinking of course makes the quirk's effect stop, and repeated use of the quirk causes the power's time of use to lessen and lessen over time. And as mentioned before, mutant type quirks are basically immune to the effects of Erasure. It's just that Aizawa would have to keep his eyes on you in order to affect your quirk factors. So I don't know, if someone with enough speed could maneuver fast enough to get past this, then they'd have an easier time with Aizawa than someone with a non-speed based mutant quirk. Now finally we get to the support items for Shota Aizawa. The two most visible from the start are his goggles and his binding cloth. Now the goggles serve two purposes. One is to provide cover for his eyes as he fights, and two, to confuse his opponents as to where he's looking so they don't know whose quirk is erased until it's too late. So this was used best in the battle at the USJ, where he was attacked by multiple grunt villains for like 2.5 chapters before being taken down by the Nomu, which was a feat all on its own honestly, because Shigaraki even stated that Aizawa's quirk and Aizawa's fight style in general isn't made for large scale brawls like the one he was in, and he was actually at a disadvantage because of that. And still he bodied like 30 villains and swapped hands with Shigaraki for a few pages before getting his elbow kind of disintegrated, which is kind of like weird honestly. But next up is his binding cloth, which is used to tie up opponents and restrain them, and if used in the right way could actually be a pretty useful weapon to off someone with. And for extra measure, he carries a pocket knife on him because why not? So now we get to our second competitor, Hawks, also known as the hero that goes too fast, or Keigo Tamaki. Growing up, Hawks' perception on heroes has been that of admiration. It makes sense because his father was actually a serial murderer and criminal, so you could probably imagine what Hawks had to go through in his younger years, and thus you could see why he would want to be a hero and be better than his father was. Fun fact, Keigo's dad was actually caught by Endeavor, which is why Hawks looked up to him and admired him so much, and was even shown in the manga holding an Endeavor figurine as a young child. So you could almost envision the level of determination that was instilled into Hawks at a young age, and at some point the government got a hold of Keigo and started to train him in order to be a government agent and a pro hero. So from that point onward, he was known as Hawks. So this new persona of Hawks actually became his identity, and it seems like Hawks forgot his real name up until Dabi reminded him of it actually, right before he singed off his wings. So yeah. Anyways, Hawks has a unique quirk called Fierce Wings, and it's a mutant type quirk that can work at long and mid range. At first, this quirk doesn't seem like much, but a pair of bright red wings. But when applied in the right way, many can see why Hawks rose to top 3 heroes in Japan at such a young age. Fierce Wings gives Hawks the ability to fly at high speeds and gives the user of the quirk high maneuverability and mobility in the air. Each feather on the wing is soft and supple, but can be controlled individually by Hawks himself via telekinetic link. One interesting fact about Hawks and the control that he has on his feathers is that he can sense vibrations in the air around him and can tell when someone's sneaking up on him or when someone's talking, and that's even after he's left the room. So you can kind of think of it as like a spidey sense if anything, or more like a birdie sense, I guess. Alright, that was a bad joke, but moving on. The feathers can be used to carry medium-sized things such as small chunks of debris to things as big as a fully grown human. As Hawks sheds more feathers, his flight and mobility decrease to the point of someone with no quirk at all, which would just leave him as a sitting duck. There's no way that you guys didn't like that one. All jokes aside, the stats of Hawks are actually pretty insane to say the least, and as with Aizawa, the stats are coming from the Ultra Archive book. So we see here that Hawks has a 6 out of 6 in speed and technique, and a 5 out of 6 in intellect and skill, with his only bad stat really being power, which kind of makes sense. He's not some brute that can smash buildings or something. But this could imply that Hawks relies on his quirk too much, and as a result is lacking in hand-to-hand combat experience. But he certainly doesn't lack in swordsmanship, as he's also been seen using his quirk in this way, but it still doesn't make up for the lack in hand-to-hand combat. Just thought I'd put that in. Hawks has a few different weaknesses, with his quirk being a mutant type quirk that gives him feathers. Obviously anything that can burn, dampen, or break his wings can and will be the end of Hawks in any battle that he takes part in. And like I mentioned, he will be lacking in hand-to-hand combat, and he's definitely not going to be on the same level as his opponent today. But Hawks also has a limited number of feathers that he can use, and whether they're damaged or not, a smart opponent can exploit this flaw and cause Hawks to use all of his feathers on other things like saving people from from a collapsing building and then finish him off close range. Hawks has some notable feats within the manga, such as the time he was stated to be one of the fastest pro heroes, which would put him at around best genus level, and that would make him hypersonic at best. And explained a little better, best genus can be considered hypersonic because of his reaction to AFO's air cannon burst that would have killed heroes that weren't even paying attention to him, and honestly would have killed all of the heroes in the vicinity. So hypersonic in terms of speed is shown as 11,400 miles per hour, but it seems a bit unclear in terms of hypersonic reaction time, which I believe that was more of what best genus was experiencing as opposed to reaction speed. Regardless, Hawks is still one of the fastest pro heroes. Hawks has some incredible lifting strength using fierce wings as well. It's stated to be class M. Now, lifting strength in versus battles are pretty simple when you break it down. So lifting strength is divided into different categories, going from class 1. You can see here on screen just how big of a list it is, and you can see just where class M really is. I think this is a pretty big stretch, as Hawks lifting the largest ship, which, to give you guys a description, the largest ship ever created is the Sea-Wise Giant, an oil tanker that weighs 657,000 tons, is pretty big, even for Hawks' standards. I'd say he's more class 50 than anything though. Okay, so now we come to a decision on who's going to win this battle between Aizawa and Hawks. So I think personally, Hawks is going to win this battle. He has a very versatile quirk and he knows how to use it very well. The same could also be said for Aizawa, not so much on the versatile side though. I do see this battle playing out where either competitor could be the victor, because on one hand you have Aizawa, who can nullify quirks but is kind of weak against mutant type quirks, which Hawks is in possession of. That doesn't mean his erasure quirk is ineffective. So like I said with the example with Ojiro, I feel like Hawks wouldn't be able to fly as fast as he would if Aizawa wasn't around and had his erasure quirk active on him. And then I feel like because Aizawa is in possession of a keen intellect, it would think of a way to get the fight to ground and down to more of a hand-to-hand combat situation, which Aizawa is winning no doubt. But Aizawa isn't in possession of any fire or anything that could really break Hawks' feathers or wings. I guess you could say he can pull out the pocket knife and then try to stab Hawks. But then again, Hawks is faster than Aizawa is. I don't think he would just stand around and let Aizawa stab him. I just feel like ultimately this battle comes down to brain power and who's going to outsmart who before the first punch is even thrown. So yeah guys, Hawks is the winner of this battle, in my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys think about the battle and the video in general down in the comments below. I enjoyed making this video for you guys, so if you also enjoyed, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. Remember, my social media handle is down in the description below, so if you want to go follow that and talk some more MHA content with me, I would love to do so as well. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.